Now, everybody in FPL is always looking for that hidden advantage or that one player that could massively change their rank. And in today's video, I'm going to go through my favourite differentials for the next 5 to 6 game weeks. Now, before we dive into today's video and take a look at my top differentials, if you are enjoying the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season, actually by the end of the year, and it is only possible with your guys' help. So if you do enjoy it, make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. First off, let's start off with two players that are definitely going to be on my radar, and I imagine on a lot of people's radars, with a decent fixture run coming up for Spurs over the next 3 to 5 game weeks as well. Obviously, they do face Manchester City in that 5th game, but along that run, West Ham, Ipswich at home, Crystal Palace away, it is a pretty decent set, and Spurs currently are top for XG created so far in the league. They've actually had a pretty good season data-wise from an attacking standpoint and also a defensive standpoint as well. Usually under Postecoglou and kind of Spurs in general, we've always imagined to be a little bit Spursy in terms of defence, and that has always correlated. They've not always been the best team for XG conceded or for created. However, this season it does seem like they've potentially tweaked something tactically, and it is starting to benefit us in terms of FPL players. Not quite working out for Spurs so far yet this season, but two of those players that have done exceptionally well are the two main men on screen. We do have James Maddison and we do have Maddison Johnson. As you can see, both of these guys have been putting up pretty decent numbers. Currently, both of them as well are under 5% owned as well in the game. James Maddison, I would say, is slightly putting up those better data, and I do feel because he is the more highly priced asset, that completely makes sense. That's what you'd usually expect from an FPL asset. If they are higher priced, you would expect them to do better. Obviously, as well with him, you will get set pieces and stuff like that, which I do feel is an added bonus and does give him an extra, I would say, arrow to his bow, if you like. So definitely a player that, you know, has really started the season well. He also started last season exceptionally well and kind of was in this very similar vein of form, and I understand why people are looking for him and why I'm going to be recommending to you guys. I personally don't have a way to get him into my team just because of that price point and the other premium assets that I've got for. However, if you do have a way to get to James Maddison, I would be very, very tempted. But if, like me, you're on potentially a little bit more of a constricted budget, then Maddison Johnson could be the answer to all our problems. He's had plenty of shots in the box. As you can see as well, his expected goals are through the roof, and he's been scoring a lot of goals this season so far. 3 goals, 2 assists. The start of the season exceptionally well on that right-hand side, and I do feel the introduction of Dominic Solanke, a natural forward for this Spurs side, has definitely helped them in terms of that creativity. And again, with this fantastic run of games coming up, I am a big fan of Maddison Johnson. Watching him as well, it has been a real delight seeing him so far this season. At 6.5 million as well, feels like an amazing value player if he can continue to see decent minutes over the next set of fixtures. So those were the first two players. Let's head on into the next set. We're going to kind of switch to the defensive assets. Again, all the assets kind of included in today's video are going to be under, I believe, 8% owned, not even 10, under 8% owned. I think that's the highest we have in today's video. Next up is going to be Leif Davis and Aït-Nouri. I know a few of us might be potentially looking for Konza replacements, as obviously his hamstring went pop at the weekend. Obviously, some other teams as well are starting to fade in form or fixtures. So again, we're probably going to be looking at kind of reinforcements within that defensive area. So let's start off first with Leif Davis. The Ipswich fixtures for the next 3, I would say, and if you could bench them in 11 and 12, you could have a pretty decent defender here on your hand. And the reason I've included him is because he is one of the top defenders for expected goals involved. If you obviously exclude Trent and Robertson, you start to get left with these two guys as kind of your other players. Obviously, Rico Lewis also featuring in there, but it is these two as the kind of standout attacking players within their sides. Now, the only thing putting me off Leif Davis is the poor Ipswich defensive record so far this season. They are the worst team in terms of expected goals conceded, and I don't think sometimes we can be so heavily reliant on a player just for those attacking returns, and I do feel that we need something out of him, maybe a little bit more where he could get a clean sheet. But the next few fixtures are very appetising, and if Ipswich do have any kind of ambitions of staying within the Premier League this season, they've got to be looking at that Everton at home fixture and that Leicester away fixture as well, as two absolute fixtures that they need to be winning. And hopefully, Leif Davis, if you do go for him, could be a very, very decent option. Like I said, 4.5 million, really, really good underlying data, kind of competing, I wouldn't say, you know, to the levels of Trent, but then you compare the price of 7 to a 4.5 million asset, you know, they're looking pretty tasty in that regard. Some player that I have been watching and mesmerizing myself over the past few weeks is Ait-Nouri. 2 goals, 2 assists, and the positions this lad is finding himself into, one that for me, if you watch Match of the Day or watch the games themselves, from an eye test perspective, is just getting into those right areas and probably going to be on the end of some absolute mega holes. Now, I know Wolves have started the season abysmally, only picking up 1 point. I think it's their worst start to a Premier League campaign in 20 years. However, the fixtures, there's a big fixture swing coming for Wolves, and I do feel like if they are going to stay up this season, then they will start to pick up results across this board, because they have played a lot of the top 6 sides already this season. They played Chelsea, they've obviously played Liverpool, they've played, they're going to play Manchester City this week as well. So you're going up against all these sides. You can't really be expecting to pull up maybe, you know, more than 1 point would have been great, but it's not going to happen. But now they've got a good run of amazing fixtures, quite a lot of them at home as well over the next periods. And I do feel like Ait-Nouri could be a great long-term pickup. I think if I was on a wild card for Game Week 8, he definitely would be a player I would be considering at that 4.4 million price range. I think if for a transfer, you're probably going to be looking more towards Game Week 9 to potentially go and bring him in, because you're not going to realistically play him against Manchester City. Let's move on. Let's take a look at some other Wolves boys as well, because like I said, this is a big fixture swing coming up around Game Week 9 for Wolverhampton Wanderers. And 2 players, again, that have been catching the eye for me are Strand Larsen and Cunha from Wolves ahead of this great fixture run. Strand Larsen, of course, is going to be your budget cheap forward. Maybe if you've had enough of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or you're not feeling Delap, or maybe you've gone for Jamie Vardy and you're just looking for that way out once Leicester's fixtures kind of fall off after this Southampton and Ipswich game, or if you've just had enough this week and you are looking to obviously make that move. I think Strand Larsen at that 5.5 million range could be potentially the next budget option that people kind of shift to, if obviously you are operating with one of those cheap forwards. As you can see here, his data is not bad, but compared to Cunha for that extra million, there is a big gulf in terms of quality, not only in terms of shots, in terms of goals, in terms of underlying data, obviously chances created, and of course those key passes as well. So for me, if I could find that extra million, I would prefer to go for Cunha. And I do believe as well, with Hwan Hee-chan being benched in quite a few of their games, Cunha could be the penalty taker for this side as well, which could be an absolute steal at that 6.5 million range. Again, like I said, with these amazing fixtures coming up for Wolverhampton Wanderers, with this big fixture swing around Game Week 8, he could be a phenomenal differential asset to go and pick up, and I do feel has the potential to go and put in some mega scores as well. We saw that from him last season, definitely has that ability in his locker, and again, going to be another player that I am going to be keeping tabs on over the next few weeks. Let's continue. Let's look at the next set. These two are probably going to take a little bit more explaining. It is going to be Manchester United. I've kind of been harping on about this Manchester United fixture swing for quite a while, because you could see it in the 11-5 data for projected clean sheets and for projected goals that there was going to be this fixture swing for Manchester United. And I picked these 2 players. Both of them they've not had like amazing starts to the Premier League, have they? Neither have Manchester United, but their XG created so far this season has been pretty decent. Their expected goals conceded, that's still leaving a little bit to be desired, and probably why I would be maybe not recommending a defender from Manchester United. But in terms of their attackers, I would say, you know, it's been a little bit hit and miss, hasn't there? They're definitely creating the chances, they're just not putting them away, but they are about to go on this absolutely incredible long fixture run. Brentford, West Ham, Chelsea, Leicester, Ipswich and Everton. Now, what you could do is maybe leave the Brentford game this week, have a little bit of a scout, see who looks good, and maybe there are reports on Thursday that there's going to be a meeting between the Manchester United board, potentially about sacking Erik ten Hag, so you might be getting in yourself for a new manager bounce. Obviously, if I was to pick right now between the 2 assets, I think Garnacho is better value for money. I don't see any reason why I would stretch myself to that 6.9 million to go and get Marcus Rashford, unless he starts to obviously kind of get himself back into that form, because he very much is a purple patch player, and when he goes on these runs and gets into the side and starts putting in consistent performances with goals that we've seen previously from Marcus Rashford, then he will definitely be an option. But right now, he's obviously not in that purple patch. But Garnacho is creating the data, is getting the opportunities, having more shots as well. And it does seem like he's obviously kind of solved that rift that he had at the start of the season with Erik ten Hag. He's now started his last 3 games and has seen decent minutes in all of those as well. So I probably would say Garnacho at this kind of bargain bottom price of 6.3 million would be the one that I would prefer over Marcus Rashford. But Manchester United as a team as a whole, like I said, do go on this pretty amazing fixture run, so there could be some really valuable assets that potentially we could be undervaluing so far this season. Finishing up the final set of players before we move on to some data for the final section is going to be Fulham. Now I know a lot of us kind of shifted away for Fulham because they had some difficult fixtures, but the Manchester City game I think shown that Fulham this year are a team to potentially be feared rather than one that we should be, kind of seeing as a green fixture this season. They've got Aston Villa at home. Not the greatest fixture. Obviously, Villa have had a pretty decent start to the Premier League season, but the past few games, they have looked a little bit leggy. Now, whether or not that was maybe building up to that Bayern game, and then obviously the big high of winning that game, and then probably a little bit of fatigue, because you do see that within athletes, when they obviously have to G themselves up, they get that big adrenaline boost, and then kind of you do come down a little bit. That's just natural. That's what's going to happen. That's the way the human body works. If you've ever been in a car crash, you have this massive shoot of adrenaline. You're pumped. You kind of, you go into survival mode. And then afterwards, you get a little bit drowsy. You start to drop a little bit. I imagine not at the same level as a car crash, but there's probably going to be still some sort of adrenaline from playing Bayern Munich and beating them at home, to then kind of, the drop off after that, and then you're playing United. Yeah, you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. So I definitely think, Villa could be a team for the taking. Everton definitely so. Brentford as well, a little bit sketchy. Their expected goals conceded haven't been great so far this season. Then they play Palace, who've been pretty woeful. Wolves as well, who've only picked up 1 point so far this season. So this Fulham run could be pretty decent. And I think, there's 2 players here that I've outlined that I feel could be really going under the radar. It is Adama Traore, whose expected goal involvement is right up there in terms of midfielders. As you can see, it seems like Marco Silva has absolutely transformed him this season into an absolute monster in terms of key passes, big chances, and getting those goal-scoring opportunities. Now, his finishing is still leaving a lot to be desired. We saw that in the Manchester City game. Did struggle with quite a few finishes. Had some big opportunities that obviously forced Ederson to save, but that's something that's not kind of new to Traore's game. He's never ever been a natural finisher. He's always managed to get himself into the positions because of the pure speed and athleticism that he has, but he's always had that lack of finishing. But for 5.1 million, I don't think it's the worst decision in the world to potentially be taking a look at this guy. If you are looking for a budget midfielder, I don't think you can grumble at that. The minutes have been decent, and like I said, the fixtures are definitely there as well. Same goes with Raul Jimenez. A lot of people are going to be looking to hop off Jamie Vardy, maybe Dominic Calvert-Lewin if they continue to blank. Obviously, there's no point sticking with them if they're not delivering. And a player that could be decent value could be Raul Jimenez. He's come back into this side. Obviously, he is competing for minutes with Muniz, who off the bench has been doing little bits and bobs, picking up assists here, goals there as well. So he is competing with somebody. But for the bargain bottom price that he is, it seems like he's getting his confidence back. If you saw the assist that he managed to pull off the other week, the kind of little back heel flick, absolutely sensational. He's kind of getting himself back to those confidence levels of what we saw when he was at Wolves before the head injury, when he was an absolute machine. It does look like he's probably done some work off field, maybe with some coaches and stuff like that, or some hypnotherapy and something like that, just to get his confidence back to the level it was. And we can see here as well, the data is pretty decent for Raul Jimenez. And again, a player that is on my radar to potentially be considering this week, of course, if maybe Calvert-Lewin or Jamie Vardy do blank again, because I can't keep giving them free kind of passes because they've got this good fixture run. You have to be doing something, lads. You've got to continue to put points in. Raul is doing that despite some difficult fixtures over the past few. Now he's got, again, a decent set here. And again, I do feel he is the starting striker right now for Fulham at the moment. So again, could be worth a potential little bit of a gamble. Before we finish up, of course, I wanted to talk about total expected points over the opening 7 game weeks, because I do feel like this could be an area where maybe we've seen players potentially put in really good performances, create plenty of data, but not correlate into points. And I feel this is sometimes really useful to look at. And maybe if you've owned some of these players, maybe just feel a little bit unfortunate that it hasn't gone your way. Obviously, James Maddison, a player we spoke about on this list, pretty decent. Anthony Gordon, I definitely think would have been recommended if, of course, the fixtures were a little bit better. But unfortunately for Newcastle, they're not. They're still heavily hampered by injury, so probably not going to be an area I'm going to be looking to invest in. Eze owners probably have to feel quite hard done by. Brennan Johnson makes this list, so that's good for our kind of analysis. Same with Adama Traore as well. Robbo owners probably have to feel a little bit unfortunate as well. He's had a pretty decent start to the season. Probably should have been correlating into some more attacking returns. And Tavernier and Semenyo as well. Two players that I highlighted a few weeks ago. Potentially you should be, maybe considering for that good fixture run. I think Semenyo picked up a goal, and obviously Tavernier managed to pick up an assist over that time period. So not the best, but at the same time, at least their attacking returns, at least the players haven't blanked. So I think if you've got a player on this list, maybe you've got to feel a little bit hard done by if they haven't hit the heights that they were expected to, and maybe give them a few more weeks. However, at the same time, there's definitely some players in here that could be undervalued and potentially could pop off with some decent fixtures. I hope you did enjoy today's differential video. Let me know if there's any that I've potentially missed in the chat as well. And thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in Game Week 8.